In 1892, the highest paid performer in all of Paris was not a singer. He was not an actress. He was a quiet, well-mannered baker. And the thing he did on stage, the thing crowds paid a fortune to see, was fart. This is not a joke. This is one of the most well-documented performers of the entire era. His name was Joseph Pujol, and Paris knew him by a far grander title, Le Petomane, which translates roughly and politely to the fart maniac. And to understand how a man earns that name and a fortune to match, we have to go back to a cold day at the beach. Joseph Pujol was born in Marseille in 1857, one of 5 children of a stonemason. As a boy, he went swimming in the sea. He put his head under the water, held his breath, and felt a sudden, icy cold rush into a place where cold water absolutely should not be. Terrified, he ran out of the water and then watched, baffled, as the sea poured back out of him. He had, without meaning to, discovered that he could draw water up into his body and then expel it. Most people would have screamed and never thought about it again. Joseph Pujol was not most people. He practiced. Quietly, privately, for years, he learned to control the muscles deep in his abdomen with extraordinary precision. He learned to suck in air and to release it exactly when and how he wanted. This is the part everyone misunderstands. There was no trick, no hidden device, no clever fakery. It was a genuine, hard-won physical skill, as real as a pianist's fingers. It just happened to be located in the single most embarrassing part of the human body. At first, he simply amused his fellow soldiers in the army, sucking up water from a basin and firing it across the room to roars of laughter. Then he trained as a baker. And to entertain customers, he would imitate musical instruments from behind the counter, claiming he was playing them. The customers loved it. The laughter was real, and it was loud. And somewhere in the middle of all that flour and bread, Joseph Pujol had a thought that would change his life. If a few people in a bakery will laugh this hard, what would a whole theater do? He debuted on stage in Marseille in 1887. The act was a hit. So in 1892, he did what every ambitious performer of the age did. He went to Paris. And not just any stage in Paris. He went straight to the most famous nightclub on earth, the Moulin Rouge. The beating heart of the Belle Epoque, with its great red windmill turning over the rooftops of Montmartre. This was the glittering temple of Parisian glamour. And into this temple walked a baker who was about to become its biggest star by farting. His act was, by every account, a masterpiece of absurd showmanship. He would walk on stage, dignified, in formal evening dress. He would bow politely. And then, calmly, he would begin to perform a full concert from his rear end. He could imitate the sounds of a small dog, a thunderstorm, and the deep boom of a cannon firing. He announced each one with a straight face, like a serious orchestral conductor. The contrast between his solemn delivery and the noises he produced was the entire genius of the act. For his grand finale, he attached a small rubber tube to himself and connected it to an ocarina, a little wind instrument. And with it, he played actual recognizable tunes. He played, of all things, the French national anthem. The reaction was not polite applause. It was hysteria. People did not just laugh, they collapsed. One journalist wrote that audiences were literally writhing about in their seats, unable to breathe. And here is the detail that turns this from funny into legendary. The women in the audience, laced into their tight corsets, were laughing so hard that they were fainting. They could not get enough air to breathe through the laughter. So the management of the Moulin Rouge made a decision so practical, it is almost beautiful. They hired nurses. They stationed real nurses in the hall during his performances, ready to revive the women who passed out from laughing too hard. Think about that. The most glamorous club in the world, the symbol of Parisian sophistication, was employing medical staff because a baker's backside was too funny to be safe. This was not a sideshow. This was the main event. Now let us talk about money, because this is where the story becomes genuinely staggering. At his peak, Le Petomane was pulling in around 20,000 francs for a single performance. To put that in perspective, the most celebrated and respected actress of the entire era was the legendary Sarah Bernhardt. She was a global superstar, a queen of serious theater. Le Petomane was earning more than double what she made. Let that settle for a moment. In the most artistic city in the world, at the height of its golden age, the single most lucrative performer was not its greatest dramatic actress. It was a man making rude noises with his body. Paris had decided, with its wallet, what it truly valued. He performed for royalty. Kings and princes from across Europe reportedly came in secret to see the spectacle for themselves. Even the future King of Belgium was said to have traveled to Paris specifically to witness the famous fart maniac of the Moulin Rouge. But of all his feats, one became truly legendary. The one that proved this was real control and not some cheap stage trick. From a distance of several feet away, Joseph Pujol could aim and blow out a lit candle, and as his grand closing flourish, he would extinguish the gas footlights of the stage, one by one, plunging the theater into darkness on his own terms. It was, against every possible expectation, genuinely impressive. Audiences would leave the theater wiping tears from their eyes, having genuinely never seen anything like it, because there had never been anything like it. He was, in the purest sense, a complete original. A man who had invented his own art form, but this golden run could not last forever. And it ended not with a flop, but with a fight over money. In 1894, Joseph Pujol did a small, kind thing. He performed an impromptu show to help out a friend who was in financial trouble. The problem was that the Moulin Rouge believed it owned him exclusively. So the management sued their own star performer for daring to perform without their permission. And they won. Pujol was fined 3,000 francs. But here's the thing about a man who has earned a fortune from his own body. You cannot really hold him hostage. Furious at being treated like property, Pujol simply walked away from the most famous stage in the world. He set up his own traveling show, which he called the Theatre Pompadour, and he took his act on the road, performing on his own terms. The Moulin Rouge had won its lawsuit and lost its single biggest draw in the process. For years, his own show was a success. But the world was changing. When the First World War broke out, the appetite for a light-hearted novelty act faded into the smoke and grief of the trenches. The age of innocent absurdity was over, so Joseph Pujol did something quietly remarkable. He retired. He hung up his ocarina, packed away his candle, and went home to Marseille. And he went back to being exactly what he had been before the fame, a baker. He later opened a biscuit factory in Toulon and lived a long, ordinary, respectable life surrounded by his family. He had been the highest paid entertainer in Paris, and he chose, in the end, the simple piece of bread and quiet. Joseph Pujol died in 1945 at the age of 88. And here is a final, oddly tender detail. After his death, a group of medical professors offered his family a large sum of money to examine his extraordinary body and learn its secrets. His family refused. They turned down the money. They had loved a kind, gentle, ordinary father, and they would not let him be turned into a specimen on a table, even for a fortune. The secret of how he did it went into the ground with him. So what do we do with the story of Le Petomane? It is easy to file it away as a silly bit of history, a funny anecdote about a man who farted for a living. But I think there is something quietly profound buried in it. Joseph Pujol took the single most embarrassing thing a human body can do, the thing we are all taught from childhood to hide and be ashamed of. And instead of hiding it, he studied it, mastered it, and made it into a genuine craft. And the world, the sophisticated, glamorous, art-loving world, did not look away in disgust. It lined up. It paid more than it paid its greatest actress. It crowned him a king. The shame, it turned out, was never in the act. It was only ever in our heads. He was a baker who found something strange in himself at the bottom of the sea and decided not to be ashamed of it. That decision made him the most unlikely star in the history of show business. And it is why, more than a century later, we are still talking about him. Joseph Pujol. The humble baker who conquered Paris, out-earned a legend, and proved that the only thing standing between an embarrassment and an art form is the courage to take a bow. And then, with one final, perfectly aimed breath, he blew out the candle. If you enjoyed this one, do me a favor and subscribe, because there is a new, dark, and ridiculous corner of history here every single week. And let me know in the comments, what is the strangest talent you have ever heard of? I will see you in the next one.